Mr. Secretary, there are reports that there are some federal workers who are going to homeless shelters to get food.
Well, I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why, because as I mentioned before, the obligations that they would undertake, say a borrowing from a bank or a credit union, are in effect federally guaranteed. So the 30 days of pay that some people will be out, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it.
Michael, do you find that tone deaf or no?
I was sitting here and I was thinking, let them eat cake. I'm looking at them sitting in their fine outfits and their jewelry, and saying it's a little bit of pain. So clueless, so out of touch, so unconcerned. I mean, the false concern is more galling. Just tell me you don't care than to sit there and pretend you do, because that is more offensive to these families. When you look, you want to break a man, take away his livelihood. You want to break up a family, take away the means to protect your children, to feed them, to give them an education, because that's exactly what this administration is doing right now.
And it doesn't seem to be moving the needle, at least not yet, although maybe more stories like that eventually will. Yamiche and Aaron, what do you think?
That Paolo interview that we played was stunning. And I think that we should remember that the power of anecdotes in these situations is real. And we only have to look at history to see that. Back after the 1995-96 shutdown, where Republicans basically tried to force Bill Clinton's hand, they wound up backing down after 21 days. Bill Clinton gave a State of the Union address a couple weeks later in which he pointed to a man who worked at the federal building in Oklahoma that had been attacked, Richard Dean. That became a key moment for the president in solidifying his reelection win. These stories, maybe not every one of them is going to penetrate, but you can find one or two that are going to penetrate. And to the extent that the American people are blaming the Republicans for this, that is something that they could wind up owning in the future.
There have been a lot of stories about the increasing gap between people of middle class and people that are of that have more means. And I think that this shutdown is really starting to highlight for people what the difference is. There's a difference between someone who can go a month without a paycheck and say, I don't know why you would go to a food bank, and the people who live paycheck to paycheck and who are just trying to hold on to their homes and saying, I can't miss not even one paycheck. You add to that I talked to a conservative that met with the president yesterday, the president of the Heritage Foundation. Her husband is actually one of the furloughed workers. This is, of course, a large think tank in D.C. She said, I want my husband to go back to work, but I don't want the president to blink. And some people are going to see that and say, well, you're the president of the Heritage Foundation, so possibly you can afford to have your husband stay home. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but there are people that are saying, well, maybe that's your idea, but imagine all the people whose husbands can't stay home and who need this money.
You talk about the conservative leaders that the president has been meeting with, and Politico has this headline talking about how conservative activists who have made a career of pulling back on immigration policies say the president has gotten carried away by his 2016 campaign promise to build the wall, which is what, remember, all of this centers on.
Yeah, look, if we're just a little bit honest about how we're here and why we're here, it starts with the guy who can't remember to talk about immigration. So they come up with a mnemonic for him to do that, build the wall. And that then becomes this battle cry of meaninglessness. It has no meaning to it because it meant nothing to him other than to remember to say something about immigration during the campaign. It has now become an entire moment to shut down the government, to prevent people from, living out their lives. And so we're here now in this space, and the question is, so what will be the trigger for the president to make him say, wow, this really is having an impact on real people?
What is going to be the trigger? Stories like the one we just saw?
Clearly not. I mean, these stories haven't, this isn't the first time we've heard this story. We've been in this.
We had somebody on the show who donated plasma for $50.
Exactly. So what is the trigger, Mr. President? You tell us what the trigger is that will wake you up to the pain and suffering that's out here.
If I were projecting what I think a White House official would say back to you, it would be like, well, what about Nancy Pelosi? Because that's been the line that I've heard. And Yamiche, you cover the White House. You guys know that tends to be the rejoinder, which is, well, why aren't you asking Democrats?
Nancy Pelosi's got no stake in it. You're the one who owned this. this. You said to us, the American people, I own this. I'm proud to shut the government down. And in fact, I won't even blame you and the Democrats, Chuck Schumer. So what should Nancy Pelosi have to do? This is on him, not on anybody else but him.
Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.